Major support for Out to Lunch is provided by the law firm of Jones Walker, established in 1937 with over 375 attorneys in offices throughout the U.S., providing a comprehensive range of services to a local, national, and international client base. JonesWalker.com.
From Tsunami Sushi in downtown Lafayette, we're out to lunch with Christian Mader, editor and publisher of The Current. It's business, Acadiana style.
Welcome to Out to Lunch. I'm Christian Mader. How do you convince a customer to buy a service they don't know they need? That's often the steepest hill to climb for businesses that offer improvements on existing products. If solving a problem is the surest path to success, then satisfaction in the market can be a real hurdle. But if what you do works that much better than what's available, you're bound to blow the competition away, or maybe blast it away. My guest, Greg Free, is in the media blasting business. His company, General Abrasives, is unique in the Acadiana market. Yeah, you can find pressure washers and other surface cleaning companies, but Greg's company uses dry ice. The technique is powerful. Dry ice leaves no water or chemicals behind. It kills bacteria and mold and can even deodorize smoke out of wood. It's a faster, cleaner process than what's typically available. He started the business after working in IT at casinos. He's originally from Austin and now lives in Opelousas. Greg Free, welcome to Out to Lunch.
Thanks, Christian. Good to be here.
Believe it or not, when Michelle Thomas Parker launched Southern Mix Bartending Services, there was a gap in the market for mobile bartending. In a state known for partying, there were relatively few companies that offered full-service bartending that could flex to meet events big and small. Michelle spent 30 years in the hospitality industry and saw how a personal touch or a twist could make a difference. So when she saw an opening in the event market, she seized on it. Southern Mix specializes in customizing bar service. Michelle and her team take the same level of care for weddings and backyard parties that you typically see with caterers. They design menus and specialty cocktails that enhance an event experience. Michelle grew up in Lafayette and has worked in bars and restaurants across the state. She founded Southern Mix in 2018. Michelle Thomas Parker, welcome to Out to Lunch.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Greg, one of the advantages of dry ice, right, is that you don't have to disassemble, right, this big piece of industrial equipment to clean it. And that sounds like something that, you know, if you've never seen it in action before, you don't have to, like, believe it. You have to see it to believe it, excuse me. So, you know, when you're trying to get this into a new business's hands, right, like, are they skeptical that this stuff is even going to work?
Definitely. Well, the main thing is having to explain 3 or 4 times exactly so dry ice, and what do you do with dry ice? Because people's exposure to dry ice is decorating for Halloween or something like that.
Right.
They never consider using it as a cleaning medium. So when you say I can take that piece of equipment that you guys have to take offline, so you're not using it for production, scrub it down by hand manually for 3 or 4 days using 3 or 4 people, but I can do it in place, leave it plugged in. I can pressure blast it with dry ice and clean it better than you guys could do it manually with no chemicals. It's nothing but skepticism because nobody has a frame of reference for it.
Yeah, that was good. It's, you know, mine would be certainly Halloween or just like it was a magic trick when I was a kid, right? But I mean, you can't just buy this stuff anywhere. I mean, I guess I have a memory of going to the grocery store with my mom, and maybe there was dry ice there. But certainly, you're not like going to Rouse's and buying dry ice. I mean, how do you get dry ice that
we actually
work
tried
at industrial
that,
scale?
and it worked badly. It was terrible. So they'll sell little blocks. We buy from a specialty manufacturer in Houston. It's a company that's actually kind of mentored us in starting the business. They manufacture dry ice in the sizes we need, which is about the size of a piece of medium grain rice.
Okay.
So 3 millimeter blasting rice. Transporting it logistically, it can be a challenge, and that's one of the barriers to, not necessarily barriers to entry, but barriers to operation in the business, is that you have to plan to get your ice. You got to keep it fresh. Fresh ice is best. We do have to travel for it. Nobody around here locally does it. It is our intention to eventually be in the production side of dry ice, but that's a little bit down the road.
So, Michelle, I'm thinking maybe a big challenge for you, right, is that if you're somebody's programming an event, the bar service can be kind of an afterthought. They're thinking to themselves, like, hey, if I could just get an open bar, people aren't paying for it, they're going to be happy, right? So they're maybe not thinking they need like an elevated experience. So is your first step having to convince people, right, that maybe what they want is a different experience? Or do people come to this and say, like, yeah, I do want something really special, you know, for my bar service at my event?
Well, usually we have to convince a client that that's a service that they need, especially for weddings. You want your weddings to be nice and elegant. You don't want the hassle of, going buy alcohol and, back in the day, it used to be like mom and pops. You have your uncles and everyone that would kind of do the bartending, but you need an upscale bartending service to go in and carefree. We go in and we take care of everything from the beginning to the end. We do a nice consultation with our clients just to tailor it just for that event. And I love the dry ice because that's the only time I heard that dry ice could be used. So we use dry ice for Halloween, right? So I was excited about this part.
Yeah. So, Michelle, when you're doing these consultations, give me a sense of like what the creative element for that actually is. Is it just like, hey, you're a whiskey family, so we're going to make sure you guys have highballs and Manhattans, or is it more something like we're going to create a custom cocktail for you that's going to reflect your family history or something really wild?
Well, I'll talk about one of the clients that I just picked up. So they're dog lovers, right? So they want specialty drinks, and they want to name it based on, the hound or whatever. Yeah. But it's pretty cool because, like they said, they have pets, they have dogs. So we'll tailor it to what the client wants. Yep. So, we ask them, we try to do it gender friendly. Mm-hmm. So meaning that we want to make sure that we don't have just the fruity stuff for the ladies, but we want to have something like an old fashioned for the guys. Yep. We tailor especially for the clients. So that's what I love the most about the consultations, because we can, get down to the meat and the potatoes of what you truly like. Because when you're spending that kind of money on an event, you want it to be special. You want it, you want to remember those moments, and that's the moments we try to put an impact on our clients.
Yeah, hey, Greg. So you mentioned kind of in your last response that you were hoping to move into the production side of dry ice, which raises an important question, which is actually how do you make dry ice? How do you go from? If you're buying it from this manufacturer, I assume you're not just like literally freezing carbon dioxide. I guess that's what you literally do, but how does one do that?
Actually, you're pretty it's not a very complicated process. Yeah. The carbon dioxide that's used to make dry ice is captured as part of a recapture program that like big refineries and chemical manufacturers will go into. So to eliminate emitted carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, they capture that gas.
So it's a green process.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And it's a net positive because not only we're using captured carbon dioxide, when we use it in a process that eliminates chemicals or runoff or even human hazard and injury, the net of it is you're getting a better impact for the carbon dioxide you take in. So these guys capture carbon dioxide, and then it goes to a gas company. You'll see the trucks around like Air Liquide and Linde and companies like that. You just buy a big tank. They drop carbon dioxide off to you. And then we have a relationship with a manufacturer that sells the equipment that takes that carbon dioxide, compresses it way down, and then makes it into blocks or rice or balls or however you want to do it. So it's really it's a simple process. Mm-hmm. The equipment isn't terribly difficult to maintain. It is, somewhat expensive, but it's one of those markets that just not a lot of people are aware of. However, the need, when you're talking about things like organ transport, air travel catering, even bartending, you can put dry ice in drinks, and to use it because it's carbonation. You drop dry ice in some spring water, and it's carbonated water. You can drink it. So use it for healthcare. During COVID, when we first got into transport and vaccines, they used dry ice to preserve vaccines for transport. So it's just it's a large market. Dry ice blasting is a big part of that market. For us, being able to manufacture it eliminates the logistics of having to drive 3 hours to Houston to go pick it up. So it's definitely a benefit for us, but we could also support other people that needed it.
Michelle, what are your supply chain issues like? So you're, I'm assuming, buying liquor at wholesale. How does this? You're not making the whiskey, or maybe you are. What is that part of the service that you're providing that you're able to buy it at a certain cost, or is it just that you're really hoping to be the service provider and not so much the conduit for buying alcohol?
Well, we do both sides. Yeah. We do the service part of it. It's all about a client's budget, right? So when we do the all-inclusive, we just have to go through wholesalers.
Yeah.
So, you go through Republic or any type of distributor that's local, and you get your alcohol from there. So.
Yeah, I mean, and you're having to get liquor licenses every time you set up, right? I mean, is that a function just like a Louisiana state law that does it that way? I mean, like, why can't you just have a liquor license to sell alcohol everywhere you go?
Well, I do not have a brick and mortar at this
Okay.
time. So as a mobile bartending service, you do have to get your permits and license each time you do cash exchange events, if that makes sense. Like if you
Yeah.
have a cash bar or if you're doing like an all-inclusive. But if a client is providing their own, then you don't need that type of that type of licensure.
Do mobile bartending services tend to eventually open brick and mortar things? It seems like you would never need to have a brick and mortar shop, right?
You do need it if you want to expand,
Oh.
right? So, there are freelance bartenders that drop in and out.
Yeah.
Where for myself, I am in the process of looking for a brick and mortar because we also have bars that I've purchased, so we can rent bars out. So we can rent equipment out. So if you have an event, you can rent those items out. So as long as it's stored properly, at your brick and mortar, yes, you can have a liquor license. You just have to go through the production of it,
Yeah. Greg, I mean, are there special permitting requirements for using dry ice? I mean, it seems like you could drop it in a drink. It doesn't seem like it'd be particularly dangerous, but I mean, I don't want to make assumptions here.
Depends on the kind of work you do. Just like anybody else, if you work with hazardous materials like lead or asbestos or mold, you have to have a permit from the state for that. One unique thing about dry ice is it's oxygen depleting. So you've heard of enclosed space work, like if you're working inside a tank or inside a small area. Carbon dioxide actually pushes the oxygen out of that area. So if you're in there without contained air, it's like you would dive with, so you would have to have your own air to breathe in a small space where the carbon dioxide can push all the oxygen out. So you'd have to have certifications for confined workspaces. So nothing that has specifically to do with using the CO2 or the dry ice itself, but just has to do with what you're actually working on, the surface you're working on or the place you're working in.
Yeah. So who are your primary kinds of clients right now? I mean, I know we kind of generally talked about the broad applications, right? Like what it can do, but
Sure.
Who's really buying the service?
So right now, we're still working on finding our niche, but the most obvious customers that have come to us first are industrial painting, customers that do restoration work like water damage and smoke and that type of damage restoration. Painters will come to us with weird problems like we accidentally painted a wall that wasn't supposed to be painted, and getting paint off of brick can be tough. So we had a painter say, "Can you please help us get the paint off of this brick wall?" And it was inside, so we couldn't pressure wash it. They couldn't use chemicals on it. So just things like that. So it also found a niche in the automotive restoration business. So you have people that collect high-end automobiles. I mean, we're talking, $750,000 Mercedes. They want them clean, but they don't want water, no chemicals. They don't want to wipe them. So you can clean the engine bay and the undercarriage of vehicles that you don't want to get wet. You don't want to expose to chemicals. It's a niche. So it's again, we're educating a market as we're serving it. So we find new uses all the time.
Yeah, that sounds like it.
Even food service, food manufacturing, it sanitizes, it kills E. coli and salmonella, so you can use it on a food production line without having to shut the production line and take it apart. So another interesting thing about dry ice is it's not electrically conductive. So if you have, now personally I've never tried it, but if you have high voltage electrical gear that needs to be cleaned, which insulators and things like that happens every once in a while, you do need to clean HV gear. You can blast it without de-energizing it because the blast stream isn't conductive. Now you got to watch out for condensation because it's super cold. Dry ice is negative, a little over negative 100 degrees. So you can tend to make condensation when you blast warm and humid stuff here in Louisiana.
We're going to have to find an application, something that dry ice can't do. You're listening to Out to Lunch. I'm Christian Mader. I'm talking to Greg Free, owner of General Abrasives, and Michelle Thomas Parker, who owns Southern Mix Bartending Services. Michelle, I mean, what would you say is your niche at this point? I mean, I was kind of thinking about, the general idea behind your business, and I would actually think, like, if there aren't that many mobile bartending services, your main competitor would just be caterers, right, who already kind of offer this service maybe on the side. But so are you finding that you're getting different kinds of customers than maybe a traditional caterer, or is it the same kinds of events?
I think it's the same types of events. Yeah. We definitely, I love weddings. Like, I can't speak enough about weddings because I always put myself in that situation as a bride. You know, the groom, you guys really don't care much about that. But you do. But
I did.
Yeah, okay. I'm sorry. Well, you're in that 1 percentile, right?
Let me correct it. I cared a lot about what we ate and what we drank. So, I mean, there's
and
that.
Guess what?
Yeah.
And that's the most important piece,
yeah.
what you drink and what you eat. And I think that's where people should really focus on their budget.
Sure.
Because you want people to have a great experience. And being in the service industry, of course, that's my passion.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's about the same.
Talk to me a little bit more about the sort of the brick and mortar concept you have. I mean, I just want to make sure I understood it correctly. I mean, were you saying that you're trying to open a bar, as in like, Southern Mix the bar experience, or was it like a supplier kind of situation where you're sort of supplying services? I just misunderstood, I think, what you were getting at.
Well, I am looking for a space that I can host events.
Okay.
And also add the all-inclusive package, so it can be a one-stop shop.
So I think they would call that vertical integration in business. Something to that effect. So, I mean, Greg, as you're trying to figure out these sort of new uses of this stuff, right? I mean, it seems to me like it's kind of just makes sense. I mean, like, I'm hearing you talk about it, and I'm like, okay, well, why wouldn't we just stop using the stuff that we're using now, right? I mean, I've pressure washed my house. It was a pain, and it did strike me. Now my house smells like, not now, but it just smells like bleach or whatever chemical you stick in the hose. I mean, why aren't we all just kind of ditching that stuff? I'm sort of making your case for you here. I mean, why aren't we all just ditching our stuff and going straight to dry ice? It makes a lot of sense to me.
Right. It's just habit. A lot of industrial processes, these guys have been doing it the same way for years, especially, oil and gas and chemical manufacturing and up to and including painters.
Yeah.
We've been sandblasting for years. And there's other dry forms of blasting. We've been using pressure washers for years. So it's getting people into a new habit. But the main reason everybody's not using it is because I can only talk to so many people at one time.
Yeah.
So when you do go and you have a conversation with a customer, you let them tell you what the value is. I just go and say, look, this is what it does. You tell me what you do on a regular basis that this could replace or stand in for. So it's, and you do have a lot of companies that they're trying to hit their sustainability goals. They are, they've got lots of EPA and state DEQ regulations that are prohibiting certain, media blasting processes and cleaning processes. So they're actively looking for an alternative. It's been, widely used in Europe since the late 80s to early 90s, where things like pressure washing and chemical usage and things like that were outlawed. The big thing with sandblasting now is the cloud. So you have silicosis that can develop from breathing in dust from sandblasting. So it's not outlawed, but it's so highly regulated, it's become expensive. So people are looking for an alternative. And you have a lot of a lot of businesses that aren't willing to invest in the equipment to do blasting, sandblasting, or dry ice blasting themselves, but they will definitely give somebody like us an opportunity to test it out. And the other thing is, it's kind of like you said before, Christian, they don't believe it. They just don't.
Okay.
Just let me just see it work.
Sure.
Let me see it work a couple of times, and let me believe you. And then, so again, we're educating the market.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned earlier, Michelle, that there was a bit of education, I guess, going on. Or you're kind of having to get people to see that maybe bar service could look a little different. I mean, what's changed as you've started to get? Like, what do people resonate with, I guess, about your concept? Is a better way of asking the question.
They resonate with the fact that I think because of the passion that we bring behind it, the professionalism that we bring, and just making sure that we tailor it, because in this age and world, everything is about pretty and fun and exciting. Social media, pictures that they can take. So they want everything to be grand. So we have to definitely make sure that we give them the grand experience. So that's why we start with a consultation. So when they hear that, it's like, we get a consultation, like what? And then we dive in deep, and if there are clients that, their budget may not want to be all inclusive. So what we'll do is I'll say, well, once you book our service for bartenders only, I will give you recommendations of what to purchase. and that'll stay in their budget because, and we also do portion control on alcohol. So, we educate them when we're there. It's like, we check IDs, even though it's a wedding, if someone walks up and they look underage, we check IDs. We are very professional about how we do the things we do, and we want people to feel safe. We don't want anyone to be on the roads drinking and driving. If we have to call Ubers or whatever, like, we'll do all of that. I'll step in. Like, I always have like one particular person that I need to speak with, right? And that's not the bride or groom. It's someone else.
It's always an uncle.
It's always someone else. So we can diffuse whatever situations we need to do.
We all
the
know that
uncle, right?
Yeah.
And we just take them to the side and do whatever we need to do, But, and once they do that, once we do that as a service, we started growing off a lot of referrals. So we get a lot of people that refer us a lot. So when we go on site and it's like, wait, we didn't even realize we was going to get all of this, because you hear it, but you don't really get that effect until we actually show up,
right?
And they love it. People absolutely love the customizing of packages.
So when you guys have to get the liquor limit, does it make y'all liable for the situation? I mean, like, I'm trying to think about obviously you take a responsibility. It's just a good thing to do, to be like, I'm going to cut off Uncle Bob, right? I mean, because he's just getting out of control. But, I mean, is there actually a liability exposure for your business, too?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay, so
and we have insurance to cover that.
Wow, okay, wow.
So
there's just a lot of risks you have to take on just for people to have a good time.
So that's why it's really important that you take it serious.
Yeah.
And you pay attention to the dynamics of people when they're coming back to the bar.
Yeah.
Because we reserve the right to stop serving anyone.
Yeah.
No one can't force me to serve an alcoholic drink, regardless of your age.
Yeah.
So we are very mindful. My staff is very mindful. If someone comes up too many times, we don't pour doubles. So we just have a way that we do things, because we want you to have a old fashioned, but we don't want a triple shot of old fashioned, right?
Yeah.
There are rules around it. Every drink you need 1 hour to leave out of your body.
Sure.
So we have to know those different concepts. It's kind of small to some people, but it's huge to us.
Yeah. Well, and that of course takes staffing, right? I mean,
yes.
Smart. I mean, lots of hospitality companies have struggled a little bit with staffing. I mean, has that been difficult for you guys to find the right people?
Well, right now we have I have 16 ladies on my team, looking for a few guys.
Okay.
We love the guys, not just for their muscles, but
yeah.
It's all about the personalities.
Sure.
But we have 16 people on our team at this time, and so far so good.
Yeah.
So far so good.
But Greg, what about you? I mean, the staffing I understand is you, maybe your wife, and
right. It's all family right now.
It's family.
So
I mean,
my kids primarily run it.
Okay.
So I'm the face. I go talk to people.
So your kids do the blasting?
The kids do the blasting. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They're older, bigger guys.
Okay.
So oil field experience and things.
So these are like 12-year-olds.
No, these aren't 12-year-olds. Even though
it could be like mowing a lawn or something.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, whatever it goes.
It's tough to hold.
Yeah.
Like my wife and my daughter don't like to hold it because it's kind of like holding a fire hose. I mean, it's 150 psi, so it's
Whoa,
not.
All right.
Yeah, it's not light, and the applicator end is heavy, and so it's work. I mean, it's not an easy thing to do. But I got two big strapping boys that can handle that work. So
are they interested in bartending? Because it sounds like
they're interested in going to the bar. I know what side of the bar they're interested in.
So I gotta ask. I mean, you're very obviously well versed in the technology, the science of this. I mean, you were working in IT before.
Right.
Were you just a media blasting enthusiast? I mean, how do you move into this to the point where you kind of live and breathe it?
Well, it's one of those things where I accidentally stumbled upon it. To talk about it, it's kind of weird and strange.
Yep.
But in my casino days, one of the unfortunate occurrences occasionally in casinos is you have organic and biological stuff that you have to clean up.
Yeah.
And again, one of the unfortunate things is sometimes that organic stuff is human organic stuff.
Sure. Okay.
So, and one of the ways they figured they could clean it up, they determined they could clean it up without making a mess, without using a lot of chemicals, without tearing up carpet or anything like that, is dry ice. So that was my first exposure to it, and that was probably 15 years ago.
Wow.
And after that, to do more research into, like, for example, they used it to deodorize smoking hotel rooms. They could turn a smoking hotel room into a non-smoking hotel room and eliminate the smell. They would use it to sanitize and clean mattresses. So that was my first exposure to it, was in the casino days.
Michelle, I mean, were you surprised when you kind of had this idea that it wasn't that common? And when I saw that, I was like, it would seem like this was fairly common, but it wasn't. I mean, did that surprise you?
Well, it did surprise me that it wasn't a lot of actual companies that were running and functionable. Well, there have always been freelance bartenders.
Sure. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Always been, people that go work for different bars. But an actual company that serves and tailored to it, outside of caterers, it didn't exist. At least I didn't see it exist.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, look, at the end of the day, the key to success, right, is just finding something that no one else is doing and being the first one to do it, or just being the first one anybody knows is doing it. It's also really helpful. So thank you guys both for joining me on Out to Lunch Acadiana.
Thanks, Christian.
Thank you so much.
My guests on Out to Lunch Acadiana today have been Greg Free, owner of General Abrasives, and Michelle Thomas Parker, owner of Southern Mix Bartending Services. We edited this conversation to fit into our time slot here on KRBS, and you can hear our unedited conversation and find out more about Greg and Michelle by listening to the Out to Lunch Acadiana podcast. You can find and subscribe on your podcast app and on our website, itsacadiana.com. If you want to know what we all look like, you can find photos from this show on itsacadiana.com and on our Out to Lunch Acadiana social media. These photos were taken by Astor Morgan. You can find more of Astor's photos at astormorgan.com. Out to Lunch Acadiana is a production of INO Broadcasting for itsacadiana.com and KRBS 88.7 FM. The producer of our show is Grant Morris. Our technical producer is Eric Merle. Our associate producers are Molly Richard and Chad Theriot. Our researcher is Leah Erdialis. Today's show was engineered by Dylan Babineau. I'm Christian Mader, editor of The Current, Lafayette's nonprofit news outlet. For stories deeper than the headlines, head to thecurrentla.com. Join me next time for more business and conversation on Out to Lunch Acadiana. Bye-bye.
Out to Lunch Acadiana was recorded live over lunch at Tsunami Sushi on Jefferson Street in downtown Lafayette. Tsunami is open Tuesday through Saturday for lunch and dinner, serving sushi, sashimi, salads, and authentic Japanese grilled dishes. Tsunami welcomes casual dining or reservations. More information at servingsushi.com. Major support for Out to Lunch is provided by the law firm of Jones Walker, established in 1937 with over 375 attorneys in offices throughout the U.S., providing a comprehensive range of services to a local, national, and international client base. JonesWalker.com. And by Sunday Soda Fountain, nostalgic classics like ice cream sundaes, house-made sodas, and even libations on Jefferson Street in downtown Lafayette. Mitchell Foreman wrote and performs all the music on Out to Lunch. You can hear Mitchell's music anywhere great jazz is sold or streamed, and at mitchellforeman.com. If you'd like to be part of Out to Lunch, to learn how your business or organization can become an Out to Lunch program partner, email info@inobroadcasting.com.